Do Pokemon need to evolve to be strong? Let's find out. In this video, I try to beat Pokemon Shield without evolving a single Pokemon. Here are the rules for this challenge. First, no evolving my Pokemon. I'll be hitting the B button a lot in this video. Second, I can catch evolved forms, I just cannot evolve anything that I catch. This means I can catch a first stage evolution like Sliggoo, but once I catch it, I cannot evolve it into a Goodra. However, if I find a Goodra and I catch it, that is A-okay. While this is not a Nuzlocke, I will be limiting my encounters to 1 per route and 1 wild area encounter after each batch. I'll be catching the first thing I run into, and if I fail to catch it, then I lose that encounter. The only exception for this rule is the wild area encounters. Since I'll get a new wild area encounter after each gym, I can choose when I want to use the encounter, so I can still grind levels if I want to wait to get my encounters for later when more things open up. Gift Pokemon like fossils are also up for grabs, and using items in battle is fair game. Alright, that should be everything. I'll also list the rules I played by in the description for those who are interested. Let's get started. Our adventure starts like any other. In a fatherless home where our rowdy neighbor drags us over to get our first Pokemon. However, instead of a Pokemon professor this time, the champion himself offers us a choice between the 3 different starters. I pick Score Bunny since he's my favorite of the 3 and name him Bugs. Bugs and I will be facing overwhelming odds on this journey, but I'm sure we can do it together. We make quick work beating Hop and then head into the slumbering wilds. Just a quick aside, I'll be showing off the most difficult battles like gyms and the finals matches. I battle Hop and other rivals so often that this video would be way too long if I included all of it. Anyhow, let us continue the journey. I can get an encounter here, but end up leaving it for later since we don't have any Pokeballs yet. After saving Wooloo, we meet Sonia and get the Pokédex. Then we're asked to go meet her grandma who lives on Route 2. At this point, we now have some Pokeballs. So we head over to the professor's house, where I catch a Rookidee I name Pex and a Blip Bug I name Blippi. When we get there, I beat up Hop's team again, and Leon gives us his endorsements so we can join the gym challenge. I'm not following any level caps for this challenge, but I try to keep my team as close to the next gym's levels as I can to keep things interesting. And I use the wild area to grind levels and get XP candy from the Dynamax dens. I ended up grinding quite a few levels well before we got to the first gym. So I handily beat some Team Yell Grunts and Hop again as we head to the first gym. On Route 3, I caught a Clink that I forgot to nickname. And in the Galar Mine, I caught a Roly-Poly that I named Unicycle. As we are about to leave the mine, we meet Trainer Bede. And it is pronounced Bede, not Bidet or Beady. I did have to look that up. And at this point, my team is starting to over-level just a bit, making most of these battles trivial since our power levels are about the same without evolving so far. Bugs is able to sweep through Bede's team all by himself. We get to Route 4, where we find our most precious encounter. This little guy was practically begging to join our team. Welcome to the team, Fluffy. With our team of 6, we take on the first gym leader, Milo. Luckily for us, he uses grass types. I start with Blippi since this will probably be the only time he'll be useful. I also forgot that you don't get healed before the actual gym leader battle, so Blippi's not at full health to start. Regardless, we keep him in and use Struggle Bug, dealing a bit more than a quarter of Gossifleur's HP and lowering its special attack. We tank a Rapid Spin, which boosts its speed. Then I decided to switch into Pex the Rookidee, who takes another Rapid Spin as he comes in. Pex is still faster, even after Gossifleur's 2 speed boosts, so we land a Pluck, leaving just a sliver of health. It uses Round, dealing less than a quarter of our HP, then we finish it off with another Pluck. Peck then levels up and learns Taunt before Milo sends out his ace, Eldegoss. Milo will Dynamax right away, and there's not much I could do besides attack, so I use Pluck again. Pex is faster, so we deal some damage before getting hit with a Max Strike, knocking Pex out. I wanted to give Blippi another chance, but he didn't outspeed and got knocked out by a Max Overgrowth. I sent out Bugs to clean up. He Dynamaxed and landed a crit on a Max Flare, winning us the first gym badge. We could also get a new wild area encounter, so I went to try and find something that could help us with Nessa's water types. And I managed to find a Lombre. It is an evolved Pokemon, but that is within the rules I set. This also means I won't be able to evolve it into Ludicolo, but once I get an Eviolite to boost its defenses, this Lombre should be a great addition to the team. I caught her and named her Leafa. We had another encounter on Route 5 where I caught an Applin and named it Worm. At first, I was excited. Worm is a grass and dragon type. But Applin are pretty weak and they only learn Withdraw and Astonish. No other level up moves or TMs besides Attract. It can learn Draco Meteor and Grassy Glide, which would have been amazing, but they are both move tutor only and I wasn't getting them anytime soon. So I sent Worm to go warm up the box in the PC. As we left Route 5, we helped the male nurse by beating some Team Yell grunts, and he gave us a tricked out bicycle in return. Helping others is always worth it. Then Hop challenged us again. Bugs handled his team well, despite a close call against Hop's Thwacky. Looks like we might struggle a bit more once my opponents use more evolved Pokemon. But we'll figure that out as we go along. When we finally get to Hulbury, there's actually some fishing spots. So I reel in a Choodle and name her Bubbles. Another water type is a great addition to the team. Now we go up against Nessa, the water type gym leader. Luckily, we have Leafa for this. But I decided to try out Clink for this match. It knows Charge Beam and Discharge, so I hoped it could sweep with it. Nessa started with her Goldeen, and the match began. My Clink ate a Water Pulse and fired back with the Charge Beam, dealing almost half Goldeen's health. After the special attack boost, Clink should be able to get the KO. We took another Water Pulse before getting the KO with another Charge Beam and getting a second boost. Next was Arrokuda. It outsped my Clink and used Bite, getting a flinch in the process. Luckily, the second Bite did not flinch and we got the KO with a Discharge. Nessa was down to her last Pokemon, Dreadnought. She would Dynamax right away, so I used a Super Potion on Clink to try and take a hit. Clink survived the Max Darkness, but it did more than half its health. It wouldn't survive another hit. I kept Clink in to get a safe switch to Leafa. Well done, Clink, you did good. With Leafa in, I Dynamaxed and took a Max Strike, but Leafa tanked it well and retaliated with a Max Overgrowth, bringing the Dreadnought into the yellow. It shrank back to normal, and we got the KO with one more Max Overgrowth, winning ourselves the second gym badge. Afterwards, we met with Rose and Sonia at a fancy restaurant. They blabbed about wishing stars and Dynamaxing, but I wasn't really paying attention. I kept trying to get the waiter to come over, but he never did. Then Rose had to leave without talking to me, and I never got anything to eat. What a waste. Anyhow, I continued on to the Galar Mines number 2. Bede was in the way again, talking some nonsense about being so strong and facing weak trainers wasn't worth his time. So we knocked him down a peg or two and got our next encounter. A Galarian Stunfisk I named Trapper. I never used a Stunfisk before, but this guy was tanky. So I added him to our roster. I then made my way through the mines, took out Team Yell and find Kabu. He would meet us at the gym for our battle later. I then caught our next encounter, a Roggenrola that I forgot to nickname. Oh well. Our new friend should be a big help against Kabu. Before we could face the gym, we had to rest up at an inn nearby where we met Marnie. We defeated our new rival, though her Morpeko was an absolute menace to my team. I had to revive Trapper to beat it, but we managed. Before taking on the next gym, I went back to the wild area and tried fishing up an encounter to help against the fire types. I caught a Goldeen. I've always thought this Pokemon was kinda lame, but she would be helpful nonetheless. Once again, I messed up and didn't give her a nickname, so Goldeen is just Goldeen. I made my way through the gym mission, where I caught a Litwick and actually remembered to name it this time. Welcome to the team, Lydia. Now, onto Kabu. He started with Ninetales, and I with Leafa. The Ninetales was faster and landed a Will-O-Wisp, but the burn doesn't affect our special attack, so Bubble Beam still does nearly half its health. On the next turn, we tank an Ember and hit another Bubble Beam, leaving Ninetales in the red. We have a repeat turn and we take out the Ninetales. Next is the Arcanine. It also outspeeds Leafa, so we have to tank a Flame Wheel before hitting back with another Bubble Beam. Leafa was holding a Shell Bell, which restores some health based on the damage dealt to the opponent, so she survives her burn only to get KO'd on the next turn. I sent out Unicycle. He has an ability that reduces damage taken from Fire-type attacks, so I was hoping to outlast the beast. Unicycle gets burned by a Will-O-Wisp before hitting a super effective Ancient Power. Then the Arcanine hits a bite that crits and leaves us in the red, but we do get the KO with another Ancient Power. Now to deal with the Centiskorch. Kabu Gigantamaxes, which is just a cooler Dynamax for some Pokemon, and knocks out Unicycle with a Max Flutterby. I bring out Bubbles to stall with Protect, but it only prevents half the damage from a Max move, and the Centiskorch manages to land a critical hit. I try to use Water Gun, but Bubbles is outsped and knocked out. With the Gigantamax running out this turn, I sent out Roggenrola. I Dynamax and get the KO with a Max Rockfall. We won the 3rd gym badge. We're making great progress. Now we need to get through the rest of the wild area to get to the next gym. But before that, let's get our next wild area encounter. I found a Drifblim, so let's catch it. And while I do so, I want to invite you to like and subscribe if you've made it this far in the video. Apparently over 91% of those watching my videos are not subscribed, and I hope my efforts have been able to entertain, uplift, and inspire you all, and I hope that you want to stick around. I post new videos every week, and I'm working towards getting to 500 subs by 2026. So if you're still watching, then consider subscribing and leave a comment if there are any other challenges you'd like to see me do playing Pokemon. Alright, this guy's being difficult. Let's send in Trapper to tank hits while I keep throwing... Oh. Well, I guess I won't get an encounter this time. Let's get to Hammerlock and see about tackling the next gym. After getting a history lesson at the vault, we can head to Route 6. Team Yell is causing another ruckus, but we beat them and can get to our next encounter. I found a silly cobra in the grass and named it Slinky. I also spoke to a guy in the Pokemon Center who gave me a fossilized Drake. So I went to the fossil lady on Route 6 and got myself a Dracovish I named Tailhead. Before I can get to the next gym, Hop needs a pick-me-up battle to regain his confidence. But we beat him and he needs to sort things out with himself before going on. So I go right to the gym. Alistair has a much tougher team than we've seen so far. But with Tailhead, I feel like things have balanced out. He starts with a Yamask, and I start with Tailhead. I had taught him Waterfall before this match, so we get a clean one-hit KO. Mimikyu is next, and this is a problem. Dragons don't like fairies very much, but I decided to keep Tailhead in anyway. A couple of Waterfalls take out the Mimikyu, and Tailhead hasn't even taken much damage yet. Maybe we'll get a full sweep here. Corsola comes out, and we hit another Waterfall. It survives, but uses Curse to cut its HP and inflict damage over time on Tailhead, thus knocking itself out. The Curse is annoying, but now we just have the Gengar. I let Tailhead go down here since Gengar outspeeds my whole team. I need a safe switch who can tank a hit. So, I send in Trapper and Dynamax for more HP. He tanks a hit and fights back with a Max Darkness, dealing more than half of Gengar's HP. Trapper absorbs another hit, and then knocks out the Omnom Gengar with one more Max Darkness, winning us another badge. After leaving the gym, Bede starts causing a ruckus, so we go teach him another lesson. No one should be allowed to desecrate such a beautiful work of art. Oh. There's some important historical artifacts behind the wall. Cool. Next, we go on to Glimwood Tangle, one of the coolest routes in my opinion. Such a vibe. Here, we catch a Morgrim and name him Rumple. When we get to town, I go into this house here and get the Eviolite from the breeder, Elena. This will really help some of my Pokemon survive more hits. With that, I head back to the wild area to get another encounter and catch Nacho the Halucha. I take a taxi back to Balonlea, Balonlea, Balloony, Balonlea. I don't know. It's French. This time we can get right to the gym and battle Opal. Thankfully, I have a few steel types, so I start with Trapper. Opal sends out a Galarian wheezing and the battle begins. I'm pretty sure this thing has Levitate, so Mudshot won't actually do anything. Trapper tanks a Fairy Wind extremely well, but I used a Crunch which hardly did anything to the wheezing. I didn't have any other good moves though. Opal likes to ask questions during her match, which offer stat boosts or drops based on my answer. I say her nickname is the Wizard and get a speed boost. However, this ends up being a lawn fight between two tanks, so I'll just skip ahead a bit. Trapper finally takes out the wheezing, and out comes Mawile. We get a good stat boost after we flatter Opal by saying she's 16. Being nice has its perks. And we KO the Mawile, the Mudshot. Now, the Togekiss. I let Trapper go down after a few crunches so I can bring in Clink. It had learned Gear Grind, the only Steel-type move any of my Pokemon had, so I Dynamaxed and used Max Steel Spike. Clink took a resisted hit from Air Slash and barely missed out on the KO. After another turn, the Togekiss falls. Now we face the Gigantamax Alchemy. On Clink's last turn being huge, we take a G-Max Finale and hit back with another Steel Spike. I potion to restore Clink's health before tanking another hit. It then takes one more hit before attacking with Gear Grind, but we miss. At least the Gigantamax wore off. I heal again, but Alchemy manages to get 2 Acid Armors off before Clink attacks. It still does decent damage though. We dodge a Sweet Kiss and hit another Gear Grind. However, the next Sweet Kiss does connect, confusing Clink and hitting itself in confusion. Alchemy uses Draining Kiss this time and gets some health back. But Clink snaps out of confusion and lands another Gear Grind. We dodge another Sweet Kiss before bringing this dessert into the red. Both Pokemon miss on the next turn and the turn after. Clink gets confused again and doesn't get a hit off. Then the Alchemy gets health back from a Draining Kiss. This is rough, but Clink snaps out of confusion and hits a Discharge, bringing Alchemy back into the red. This repeats itself, so I use Gear Grind again, but it leaves Alchemy with the tiniest sliver of HP I have ever seen. Then it KOs Clink on the next turn, getting back a little bit of health. It's still in the red, so I sent out Bugs the Score Bunny to outspeed and finish this long match with a headbutt. I now have the 5th badge. I then escorted Opal back to Hammerlock, where she kidnaps Bede, and I continued on my way. There's some explosion that Sonia and Leon tell me to ignore, and we head to Route 7 where Hop wants a rematch. This is when I start to see the power creep from evolution come into play. But I'm surprised to see Bugs hold his own in a few matchups nonetheless. After we beat Hop, we catch a Meowstic in the grass and name her Persephone. Then it's on to Route 8, where we catch a Phalanx and name it Ares. Route 8 has 2 different areas with different encounter tables, so I catch a Sneasel in Steam Drift Way and name her Korra. Before taking on the next gym, I spent some time leveling up Pokemon and taking on some Dynamax dens. Bugs the Score Bunny wouldn't learn any more Fire-type attacks at this point, so I found a raid where I got the TR for Blaze Kick. With the new moveset, I was ready to face Melanie, the Ice-type leader. She sent out Frostmoth and I sent out Bugs. I figured I could use Flame Charge here to get a speed boost, and Bugs gets a one-hit KO. Darmanitan came in next. My hope was that Bugs could at least two-shot this ape, so I used Blaze Kick and left the gorilla in the red. Way to go, Bugs! We managed to survive a headbutt and got the KO the following turn with a quick attack. Next was the Ice Cube. This one was a bit tricky. Ice Cube's ability Ice Face lets it tank a physical move without taking damage for one turn. Bugs attacked Ice Cube once to break the face, but it used Hail, which restored its Ice Face. We had to hit it again before taking an Icy Wind and surviving in the red. Then Blaze Kick missed and Bugs went down. I sent out Nacho next. He lands a Brick Break that was just shy of the KO. Nacho then survives a Freeze Dry before getting the KO with another Brick Break. Now the hard part. Lapras. Melanie Gigantamaxes Lapras and uses G-Max Resonance. Nacho is able to outspeed and use Fly, allowing him to avoid the G-Max Resonance and get some damage off before going down on the following turn. And I send out Fluffy to take a hit and get some damage with Dig. After Fluffy goes down, I bring in Aries to Dynamax and use Max Knuckle. It's super effective, but this Plesiosaur won't go down so easily. Aries is hit with an Icy Wind, lowering its speed. Lapras then outspeeds on the next turn and lands a Sing, putting my giant squad to sleep. Aries doesn't wake up and goes down after 2 surfs. I send Trapper in next to hit a Metal Claw. He avoids the first Sing, but doesn't get the KO and is put to sleep the next turn. I use this chance to revive Aries and let Trapper tank a Surf. After he goes down, I send in Tailhead. Which dino will come out on top? Trailhead is faster and hits a Bite, but Lapras takes it and hits back with an Icy Wind, lowering Tailhead's speed. Lapras now outspeeds and uses another Sing. But it misses, and Tailhead gets the KO with one last bite, winning us the 6th gym badge. After I leave the gym, we meet up with Sonia and Hop at a restaurant in town where we actually get to eat this time. We then head to the Hot Springs Bath in town where we face Hop in battle once again. He's starting to get much more difficult to beat now that his Pokemon are fully evolved, but we managed to pull out the win anyway. Next, we go through Route 9 where I catch a Pelipper I name Pico. The male nurse is in trouble again, so we beat Team Yell and he upgrades our bike. Now we can ride on the water. Helping people is great. We continue through the route until we get to Spikemuth. Marnie helps us get in so we can face the gym, but not before challenging us to a battle. This time I was much more prepared and swept her whole team with Nacho. Before taking on the gym, I head back to Route 9 and get 2 more encounters for the different areas in the route. I named the Whalmer Beach Ball and the Clobopus Punchy. I also went back to the wild area to get my encounter for beating the last gym. I ran into an Araquanid, caught her, and named her Dewdrop. Now for the gym. Pierce is the Dark-type leader and sends out a Scrafty to start. I sent out Nacho. Nacho gets intimidated and flinches on the first turn from Fake Out, so I use Sword Stance on the following turn to raise my attack. Then Flying Press gets the KO. Malamar is next. Another Flying Press brings it into the yellow, but it uses Psycho Cut and knocks out Nacho. I send in Tailhead next and get the KO with the Waterfall. Piers then sends out his ace, Obstagoon. I switch out Tailhead and send in Aries. I tried to use First Impression, but the Obstagoon protected itself and lowered my defense with Obstruct. Aries took a Shadow Claw on the next turn, got some health back from its held Citrus Berry, and used No Retreat to boost all of its stats at once. I tried to attack the Obstagoon, but it used another Obstruct. However, Aries was now faster and got the Oko with a Brick Break. Skuntank was all Piers had left. It used Sucker Punch, bringing Aries into the yellow, before he hit back with a Brick Break that crit, leaving the skunk in the red. I tried to outplay the sucker punches by using no retreat to stall, but Ares ultimately went down when I tried to attack. It was now time to bring him in. Fluffy. He took a toxic and then completely overkilled with a retaliate. No one messes with Fluffy or his friends. We now had our 7th gym badge. With only one gym left, I took this chance to head back to the wild area and get another encounter. This time, I caught a Noivern that I named Jet. I then took some time to adjust my team to better handle weather and double battles as we start our final gym battle against Raihan, the dragon-type user. He started with Flygon and Gigalith, his Gigalith summoning a Sandstorm with its Sandstream ability, and I started with Nacho and Tailhead. I wanted to take out the Gigalith as quickly as possible, so I doubled down into it. A Flying Press from Nacho was only neutral damage. Then my team took a Breaking Swipe from the Flygon before Tailhead landed a Waterfall on the Gigalith, causing it to flinch. I swapped out Nacho to bring in Pico, who summoned the Rain with Drizzle. After another Breaking Swipe, Tailhead gets the KO on the Gigalith. Sandaconda comes out, so I start to target the Flygon. I should have used Protect on Pico here since I knew the Flygon had Thunder Punch, but I didn't and Pico went down. Tailhead gets off a Dragon Pulse and brings Flygon to the yellow. Sandaconda uses Glare to paralyze Tailhead. I now send out Jet, who outspeeds Flygon and gets the KO with the Dragon Pulse. Sandaconda paralyzes Jet and Tailhead hits with a Waterfall. This activates its Sandspit ability and summons another Sandstorm as Raihan brings in his Duraludon. Raihan Gigantamaxes his Duraludon while the Sandaconda protects. A Max Rockfall slams into Jet, but he manages to tank it and survive in the yellow. Jet gets off a Tailwind to boost the speed of my Pokemon, and Tailhead fails to hit the Sandaconda who protected this turn. On the next turn, the Tailwind offsets the speed drop from the paralysis, and Jet lands an Air Slash on the Sandaconda, getting the KO. However, Duraludon is still faster than Tailhead and knocks him out with a G-Max depletion. I send out Trapper next. Jet uses Dragon Pulse to bring the tower down to almost half its HP. Then, a Mud Shot from Trapper brings it down to a sliver of red after it crits. So close! The Duraludon hits a Max Knuckle into Trapper, who tanks it really well before the Duraludon shrinks back to normal. Jet gets fully paralyzed on the next turn and is knocked out by Stone Edge. But Trapper gets revenge by using Revenge, and we KO the Duraludon and claim our final gym badge. It was now time for the semi-finals. But first, let's get our last wild area encounter. I found a Lapras and named her Nessie. I then went through Route 10, where I accidentally KO'd the Glalie I encountered, so no new Pokemon here. But I felt like we already had a good team to win this challenge. So we began our first match against Marnie. Nacho was amazing here. I was expecting Marnie's Liepard to use Fake Out, but it didn't, so Nacho was able to get off a Swords Dance. On the next turn, Liepard uses Nasty Plot again, so Nacho gets the KO with Flying Press. Then he goes on to KO the Morpeko, Toxicroak, and Scrafty without taking any damage. Hawlucha is an awesome Pokemon. Alas, the sweep ends here as Grimmsnarl comes out last. Marnie Gigantamaxes, and Nacho only deals about 2/3 of its HP before going down. I try sending Bugs in next, but his Blaze Kick is just shy of the KO, and he falls too. I send in Persephone to finish this guy off, but Marnie uses a full Restore, and Fake Out barely does anything. I go for a Charge Beam, dealing decent damage, but also boosting our special attack. Grimmsnarl just uses Torment. On the next turn, Grimmsnarl bulks up and tanks a Shadow Ball, leaving it just above half its HP. Another Charge Beam brings it to the yellow, but Persephone falls to a Darkest Lariat. I sent out Tailhead, who finishes the match with a waterfall. Next is our final match against Hop. He starts with double, and I start with Nacho. I try to use Sword Stance, hoping Nacho can take a hit, but the double uses Cotton Guard to boost its defense. I use another Sword Stance to make sure I can KO, and Nacho manages to tank a Zen Headbutt pretty well. Then, Nacho gets the KO with a Drain Punch that also brings him back to full HP. Nacho goes on to take out the Pincurchin, the Corviknight, the Snorlax, and the Rillaboom. Hawlucha with Sword Stance is a very good combo. With Hop defeated, we now move on to the finals. There's some Rose stuff we do between here and the finals, but let's just skip ahead since the story isn't too relevant for actually completing this challenge. As we start the finals, we get a surprise challenge from Bede, who has gone through some crazy Grandma Fairy training. He starts with Mawile, and I send out Bugs the Score Bunny. Intimidate drops Bugs' attack, which means Flame Charge does just shy of half its health. We then tank a Crunch. Bugs then lands a Blaze Kick on the next turn for the KO. Looks like evolving doesn't matter. Great job, Bugs. Gardevoir comes in next. It takes a Blaze Kick pretty well and KOs Bugs with a Psychic. I sent out Persephone next. She hits a Fake Out to get a bit of chip damage before hitting a Shadow Ball on the next turn, bringing the Gardevoir to the red. It uses Wish, and then Bede uses a full Restore before I use a Charge Beam. The Wish heals the Gardevoir back to full HP. At least we get a special attack boost. I go for another Charge Beam to get another boost, and Persephone tanks a Dazzling Gleam. Then I get the KO with a super effective Shadow Ball. Galarian Rapidash is next, but it also falls to a Shadow Ball. All that's left is the Hatterene. Bede Gigantamaxes before we hit another Shadow Ball, bringing the Witch into the yellow. Persephone then falls to the G-Max Smite. I bring in Tailhead to hit a Waterfall, but it just misses out on the KO, so he falls to another G-Max Smite. Nacho is next, and he outspeeds and finishes the match with a super effective Poison Jab. With Bede defeated, we move on to face Nessa once again. But this time, her team is much stronger. I have Tailhead start against her Golisopod. He takes a first impression and retaliates with a Rock Blast that hits 3 times. On the next turn, we attack first and hit another Rock Blast, triggering Golisopod's emergency exit and bringing in Sea-Key. Tailhead uses Dragon Pulse for a bit of damage before the fish sets up an Aqua Ring to restore a bit of HP every turn. I go for Bite and then tank a Mega Horn. Another Bite gets a flinch and Sea-Keen is now in the yellow. We exchange blows again, bringing it to the red. I try to finish this with another Bite, but Nessa uses a full Restore. At this point, I was getting a little fed up with all the healing, so I switch in Nacho, who resists a Mega Horn. Then I set up 2 Sword Stances and start the Drain Punch sweep. At least, I thought it would be a sweep. But Nessa's Pelipper survives a Poison Jab and KOs Nacho with an Air Slash. With the rain setup, Water-type moves would hit hard, so I sent in Bugs. Why, you ask? Well, because he's weak to water, of course. I immediately switch Bugs out and bring in Tailhead, who takes a Water Pulse, and because of Water Absorb, gets some HP back. See, I know what I'm doing. I then use Rock Blast in case Nessa uses another full Restore, but it misses and the Pelipper sets up a Tailwind. Now that it's faster, it heals with Roost, losing its flying type for a turn, so Rock Blast only does neutral damage. This dance goes on for quite a few turns until Tailhead goes down to an Air Slash. But with the rain gone and the Tailwind petered out, Persephone can come in and get the KO with the Charge Beam, boosting her special attack in the process. Golisopod comes back, and I switch into Bugs, expecting the first impression, but instead gets hit with a Shadow Claw. Bugs uses Blaze Kick, but it only leaves the Golisopod in the red, and Bugs falls. Persephone comes back out to finish off the bug with another Charge Beam. Barraskewda comes out next. We take a Throat Chop and clap back with an Energy Ball, but this darn fish survives in the red. I let Persephone go down and then brought in Nessie to clean up with a priority Ice Shard. Dreadnought is Nessa's last Pokemon. It Gigantamaxes and hits a Max Darkness, but Nessa takes it well and returns with a Brine, dealing about a quarter of Dreadnought's HP. Nessie falls to a Max Rockfall on the following turn, and I'm left with only Leafa. I sent her out and Dynamax immediately. She tanks a Max Darkness before slamming into the Dreadnought with a Max Overgrowth. Dreadnought shrinks down, and Leafa takes a crunch before getting the KO with another Max Overgrowth. With Nessa defeated, we now face Alistair. I start with Tailhead against his Dusknoir. I tried Waterfall on the first turn since I wasn't sure if Bite would actually deal more damage without Stab. Then we eat a Rock Tomb for a bit of damage. Then I try using Bite, which does seem to do more damage. Dusknoir flinches, so we're able to get the KO on the following turn. Chandelure comes in and burns Tailhead with a Will-O-Wisp before we can hit it with a Waterfall, weakening our attack so it survives in the green. We tank a Shadow Ball and bring the Chandelure into the red with another Waterfall. Alistair uses his full Restore, and we hit another Waterfall. Then Tailhead falls to a critical hit Shadow Ball. I send in Leafa next and have her set up a Rain Dance. The rain will boost Bubble Beam's damage and double Leafa's speed since she has Swift Swim as her ability. On the next turn, Leafa outspeeds and gets the KO. Poltegeist is next. Leafa outspeeds, but Bubble Beam does not do very much, even with the rain. This silly little teapot starts to protect every other turn, so we eventually lose the rain and fall to a Shadow Ball. Poltegeist is in the red though, so I sent in Bugs to finish it off with a Flame Charge. Cursula comes in, and Bugs hits it hard with a Blaze Kick, bringing it all the way to the red. Its weak armor lowers its defense, but it used Strength Sap to lower our attack and regain a ton of health. So on the next turn, it still survives in the red. It now outspeeds on the following turn, but it just uses Amnesia, so Bugs gets the KO with the Flame Charge. Alistair's last Pokemon is Gengar. It Gigantamaxes, but we manage to outspeed and land a Blaze Kick before falling to a Max Darkness that crits. I then bring in Persephone, who hits a super effective Psychic that crits and wins us the match. Now for Raihan. This time it's a single battle, but he's still up to his weather shenanigans. I start with Leafa against his Torkoal. Drought sets up the sun, but we outspeed and use Rain Dance, which prevents him from getting off a one-turn Solar Beam. A Bubble Beam brings the Torkoal to a quarter of its health before Leafa shrugs off the Solar Beam. Raihan uses his full Restore here, and our Bubble Beam brings the turtle into the red this time. One more Bubble Beam, and the Torkoal falls. Turtonator comes in, and Leafa hits it hard with a neutral Bubble Beam. It sets up a sunny day, so on the next turn, I use Rain Dance when it tries for Shell Trap, causing Turtonator to lose a turn. Then I use Bubble Beam again, and repeat this pattern until the Turtle Dragon falls. Goodra is next, so I start using Ice Punch. However, this slimy fellow is very tanky, and retaliates with perfectly accurate Thunder in the rain. But Leafa manages to hit 2 more Ice Punches before going down. The rain is now gone, and I send in Persephone to finish off the Goodra with a Psychic. Now to deal with the Flygon. It's faster and sets up a Sandstorm, but all we can do is attack. Psychic doesn't quite do half to the Flygon, so we only get it into the red before Persephone is KO'd by a Crunch. Then we bring out the one, the only, Nacho the Halucha! You know what that means, right? We set up a sword stance, take a hit, and land a drain punch, knocking out the Flygon. All that's left is the Duraludon. It Gigantamaxes, and we hit it hard with a drain punch, restoring our HP in the process. Nacho survives the max steel spike and finishes the match with another drain punch. We've done it. We made it to the championship battle against Leon. But silly Chairman Rose has to go and interrupt things with some crazy idea about saving the future of Galar by reviving a super dangerous legendary Pokemon. After beating him and saving the day, we can finally get to our final match of this Pokemon challenge. Here's my final team, a little underleveled, but I believe we have what it takes. Leon starts with Aegislash, and I start with Persephone. He uses Keen Shield to protect on the first turn, but our kitty hits it with a Shadow Ball on the next turn before going down to a Shadow Ball herself. Now it's time for Bugs the Score Bunny to shine. He comes in and takes out the Aegislash with a Flame Charge. Well done, Bugs. Haxorus then comes in, so Bugs tries to get a flinch with a Headbutt. It doesn't work, and Bugs goes down to an Earthquake. We send in Nessie, who barely survives an Outrage and KOs this lizard with an Ice Beam. Dragapult is next, so Nessie stays in and barely survives a Thunderbolt before nailing the Dragapult with an Ice Beam. Nessie then secures the KO on the next turn with a priority Ice Shard. Now to deal with Mr. Rhyme. Nessie does a bit of chip damage with Ice Shard before falling to Thunderbolt. I send in Jet next, but a Dragon Pulse is not nearly enough, and he falls to a Freeze Dry. I send out Nacho, and use this chance to max revive Bugs, the one we need to win this. Nacho's noble sacrifice gets us a safe switch to Bugs, who is then able to outspeed and KO this dapper man Pokemon thing. Inteleon is next. And this guy is kinda scary. I revived Persephone and let Bugs go down. You did great, my friend. Take a well-deserved rest. Persephone is able to get off 2 energy balls, but they weren't enough. I use a turn to revive Jet as Persephone falls to a Snipe Shot. My only hope here was that Jet would outspeed and KO the Inteleon, so I could save Tailhead for Leon's Charizard. But Jet doesn't outspeed, and gets hit by a Snipe Shot. And survives with 6 HP! Letting him KO the Inteleon with a Dragon Pulse. All that's left is the Charizard, the level 65 Flying Flaming Lizard. Leon Gigantamaxes, and I use this first turn to revive Nessie and bring her in after Jet is KO. I use a full restore on Nessie to survive another turn of the giant flaming lizard. Then Nessie hits a priority Ice Shard for a bit of chip damage before getting knocked out by a max Rockfall. I send in my last Pokemon, Tailhead. I used everything I had to force this 1v1, but I could still lose it all. This Charizard had 5 levels above Tailhead. It could survive a hit and knock us out. Charizard is faster and hits an Air Slash, but we hang on and hit a Waterfall. The Charizard barely survives, but falls to the Sandstorm he had set up when he used Max Rockfall. I did it! I beat Pokemon Shield without evolving a single Pokemon. This was a fun challenge, but I think it could be made more difficult by only using basic Pokemon and not allowing any evolved forms. I also enjoyed limiting my encounters for each round. I got to use some Pokemon I've never played with before, and had to work around tight matchups without catching something that could make it easier. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's quite a long one, but it was a fun challenge. Comment below any other challenges you'd like to see. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy my content. Until next time, may your strikes be swift, your crits be true, and your typing ever strong. Farewell.